I thought I had time. I really did. That's what Harold told me last fall. He was sitting on his porch in Iowa, a blanket across his knees, the air filled with that soft, smoky scent of burning leaves. I worked hard, saved money, raised a family. I kept saying, I'll travel when I retire. I'll write that book when I slow down. I'll make peace with my brother someday. Then he looked down at his hands and said, someday never came. Harold isn't alone. Thousands of older adults, every year, sit with that same quiet ache, a heart full of things left undone. Some big, some small, but they all echo the same feeling. I wish I had. That's why this episode exists. Not to dwell on sadness, but to shine a light on what still can be done. Because learning from others' regrets is one of the greatest gifts we have as we age. Today, we'll walk through 5 of the most common things people over 70 say they regret not doing after 65. And more importantly, how you can avoid those same regrets. Some will surprise you. Others might feel all too familiar. But all of them are calls to action, whispered by people who've lived long enough to see clearly. Ruth was 81 when she told me her story. I haven't spoken to my daughter in 12 years, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a small fight. Nothing serious, really, but neither of us called the other. I thought she should apologize. She thought the same. The years passed. Seasons changed. Grandchildren grew up. No birthdays shared. No holidays together. Just silence. And now, she asked. Now, I don't even remember what we were fighting about. I just miss her. Many older adults carry this same kind of quiet grief. A sibling they don't talk to anymore. A best friend from high school who drifted away. A child they stopped understanding. Sometimes the wounds are deep, but often they're just pride, time, and misunderstanding layered too thick to peel away easily. And yet, almost everyone I've spoken to about this says the same thing. I wish I had been the first to reach out. Don't wait for the right moment. It rarely comes. A letter, a message, or even a voicemail can be a bridge. Don't expect an instant reunion. Just make the first crack in the wall. Because the longer you wait, the heavier the silence becomes. And eventually, the chance to reconnect may slip away. As Harold said, you think you have time, until you don't. When I asked Eleanor, a retired librarian from Ohio, how she spent her 70s, she sighed. Honestly, I don't remember much of them. Not because I was ill. I just didn't do anything new. I kept to my routine. The same breakfast, the same news, the same chair by the window. She wasn't bitter, just quietly sad. I thought retirement would be freedom, but somehow I got stuck. Every day felt the same. And then suddenly, 10 years had passed. What Eleanor described isn't rare. In fact, it's one of the most common regrets older adults express when reflecting on life after 65. Routines can be comforting, especially after decades of working, raising families, and meeting responsibilities. But for many, that comfort quietly becomes confinement. The world shrinks to a few rooms. The TV becomes the evening companion. The grocery list becomes the weekly event. I didn't feel sad, one man told me. I just stopped feeling much of anything. That's when regret settles in. Not like a thunderstorm, but like fog. Because these years were supposed to be full of stories, not just survival. And no, it doesn't take skydiving or trekking across Europe. Sometimes, all it takes is breaking the rhythm. Trying something new, learning, creating, connecting. Pick one small new thing this month, something you've never done before. A painting class, a community walk, a beginner's yoga group. Say yes to one invitation you'd usually decline. Revisit an old interest you left behind, even for just 1 hour a week. Small changes create momentum. Momentum creates energy. And energy brings life back into your days. Because the goal isn't to stay busy. The goal is to stay awake to life. When Paul turned 74, he found an old box in the back of his closet. Inside were pieces of a life unlived. Postcard from places he'd dreamed of visiting. A sketch pad with only 3 pages used, a letter he never sent. These were all mine, he said quietly. Little pieces of the person I wanted to be and somehow forgot. Paul had spent decades doing what he thought he should. He built a career, raised a family, paid the bills. But at some point, he stopped choosing what he loved and simply followed the path others expected of him. What he felt is something many older adults recognize only later in life. For years, you might play a role. The strong one, the provider, the peacemaker, the one who doesn't make a fuss. And somewhere along the way, your real voice gets quieter. I've spoken with countless people in their 70s and 80s who said the same thing. I wish I had let myself be who I really was earlier. Not just in big life decisions, but in the small ones too. What to wear, what music to play, what kind of life to live when nobody's watching. Some hid their creativity. Some buried their beliefs. Others simply gave up the joy of trying something wild, for fear of being judged. One woman told me, I used to dance barefoot in the backyard when I was young. I stopped the first time someone laughed. Then she looked away and added, I haven't danced since. Ask yourself, what did I silence in myself to make others more comfortable? Is there a part of you, curious, bold, playful, that you've left behind? This week, give that version of you just 1 hour. Paint, sing, write, speak your mind, walk barefoot in the grass. The moment you choose to do something just because it feels like you, not useful, not impressive, just real, you begin coming home to yourself. You don't need a stage. You don't need an audience. You just need a quiet place and a little courage. That's when the unlived parts of you start to return. Not all at once, but gently. And when they do, life starts to feel whole again. When Michael retired at 66, he made a list. A real one. Written on yellow legal paper in big, hopeful letters. Projects I'll finally finish. He planned to fix the old shed. Digitize the family photos. Learn guitar. Maybe even build that birdhouse he promised his grandson 2 years ago. But somehow, he told me, the days just slipped by. By 72, the list was still on his fridge, fading, curling at the edges. I kept saying, next week. Then I pulled my back. Then my knees gave out. Now I can't even lift the boxes I'm meant to go through. Michael's story isn't rare. It leads us to a regret that's not dramatic, but deeply common and quietly painful. The things we postpone, not because they're scary, but because they're boring, those are the ones that come back later, heavier. Cleaning out the attic, sorting old papers, having that small surgery. They're never urgent until they are. And when your body changes, or your memory starts to slip, or your stamina fades, you realize the window to act was earlier than you thought. These aren't just tasks. They're connections to meaning, legacy, and peace of mind. I've heard dozens of older adults say, I wish I'd taken care of those things while I still could. Now, they hang over me, and I don't have the strength to deal with them. Take one task, just one, and finish it this week. Go through one drawer. Call that repair service. Donate the clothes you no longer wear. Don't aim to finish the whole list. Just move the weight by an inch. You'll be surprised how light you start to feel. Because small things left undone can quietly become heavy things we carry. But small things completed, even slowly, can bring a sense of power, pride, and peace back into our lives. You still have time. Use it before it fades. When I asked a group of women in their late 70s, if you could speak to your 65-year-old self, just for a minute, what would you say? The answers came slowly, not rushed, not rehearsed, just honest. I'd tell her to stop worrying what the neighbors think. I'd say, take that trip, even if it's not the perfect time. I'd remind her to hold her husband's hand more often. One day it won't be there. These weren't grand regrets. They were small, real, and human. Moments missed, words unspoken, simple joys postponed until they quietly disappeared. A man named Jerome, now 84, told me, most of what I regret isn't what I did wrong. It's what I never let myself enjoy. He didn't mention money. He didn't mention missed career chances. He mentioned Sunday mornings, the smell of pancakes, the time he didn't take off work to go fishing with his son. I thought I was being responsible, he said. But what I really was absent. None of them talked about winning, or achieving, or proving something. They talked about being present, being kind, being brave in small ways. These voices scattered, soft, deeply human. They don't come from books or doctors. They come from the inside, from quiet afternoons, from sitting still long enough to finally feel what mattered. And they all seemed to say the same thing. It wasn't the big mistakes. It was the little things I didn't know I'd miss. You don't need to make every second count. You just need to notice more of the seconds you have. This part of life, this slower, quieter, deeper part, it's not the end. It's the place where clarity finally arrives. And sometimes clarity whispers. You're allowed to want more. Even now, Frank never lacked love. He had a devoted wife, 2 children who called regularly, friends who remembered his birthday. But when I met him at 85, he said something I didn't expect. I kept everyone just a little too far away. I asked what he meant. He shrugged. I was always polite, always helpful, but I didn't let them see me cry. I didn't let them see me scared. I didn't let them hold me when I needed it most. We often talk about giving love, being kind, generous, supportive. But there's another side of the story that's rarely mentioned. Many older adults share this quiet, private regret. I didn't let myself be cared for. I never asked for help, even when I was drowning. I laughed off compliments. I changed the subject when someone said they loved me. Why? Because they didn't want to be a burden, or appear weak, or maybe because deep down they didn't believe they deserved that kind of love. But here's the truth. Receiving love is also a gift to the giver. When you let someone help you, when you cry in front of them, when you stop pretending to be okay, you're not taking something from them. You're giving them a chance to show up, to matter, to feel needed. When someone offers help, say yes. When someone says, I love you, let it land. Don't deflect it with a joke. Let someone sit with you in your pain without trying to fix it. You don't have to do this life alone, and you never did. If love knocks gently on your door, don't pretend you're not home. Let it in. Let it warm your tired shoulders. Let it carry part of the weight. Because one day, someone will say, I only wish they'd let me love them more while I still could. There's a moment, usually quiet, when a person in their 70s or 80s or even 90s realizes, I'm still here. And that means something is still possible. You may not have the knees you once had, or the energy, or the speed, but you do have time. And more importantly, you have clarity. Clarity to see what truly matters. Clarity to love deeper, laugh softer, say what you really feel. Clarity to choose, finally, your own way. Everything we talked about in this episode, the broken bonds, the shrinking days, the unlived dreams, the little tasks, the closed-off heart, none of it is beyond repair. You can still reach out, still wake up, still return to yourself, still let someone hold your hand and not pull away. And maybe, just maybe, one day you will sit on a porch or by a window or in a garden and say not, I wish I had, but I'm so glad I did. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode touched you, share it with someone you love, because maybe they too are still holding on to things they can let go of, or still waiting to begin again. Until next time, take care, and remember, it's not too late to live the part of your life that matters most.